You're listening to Creating a Universe, a Love Anarchy podcast hosted by William J. Rogers. On this show, we follow the journey of creatives, artists, and entrepreneurs who are making a name for themselves in the ever-evolving landscape of today's industry. Featuring an insight into both Love Anarchy and the Lovaniverse music universe, as well as the individual projects and stories of each of our guests, from the music industry and beyond. So whether you're a budding creative or simply interested in what goes on behind the scenes, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Creating a Universe. I'm your host, William J. Rogers, and today I am here with multi-instrumentalist, producer, and cinematographer, Theo Watts. How's it going, man?
Hey, yeah, really good. How are you today?
Yeah, very well, thanks, man. Very glad to be having this chat with you.
Yeah,
so,
me too. I see...
Go on.
I was going to say, I see you talking to a lot of people, and I've always wanted to have a conversation as well. So really thrilled that you're having me here.
No, yeah, it's an absolute pleasure, man. I really, appreciate the enthusiasm and you engaging with those. And as you mentioned before, like we've got a lot of mutual friends and things like that. So yeah, really cool, man. Really happy to be having this conversation. So just to kick things off, really, would you be able to give like just a bit of an introduction as to who you are and the various things that you're up to, basically?
Yeah, sure. So I am as you said, multi-instrumentalist. So I play drums, bass, guitar, saxophone, piano, and if I really have to, sing, but I don't like doing that because I know better vocalists, so I'll let them do that. And yeah, I do filmmaking as well. So music videos or documentary, whatever I fancy, really.
Cool. Yeah, man. It's really impressive, I have to say, man. Like you seem to do quite a lot, and everything that you do is very good. Like you have a very good kind of like production level to what you do. I think I'm always very kind of impressed by your production, the music on the music side, on the video side. Really, really cool, man. So I'm kind of like keen to just like unpack that a bit and get a bit more of a background on so you've got music, you've got film. Where did it all start? Like when did you get into music? Was it music first, film first? How did that all happen?
Great question. Yeah. Well, I think so for me, film was definitely the first thing. When I was a kid, my dad got me this like little camera and run around and make films with my friends.
Nice.
When I had friends. And I'd force everyone to be in these like action films, and it was always a case of I needed music to go in those films, and I was 11, so I didn't have money to buy music, so I'd have to make my own. Not very good, obviously, but I'd still have to make my own. And for the next couple of years after that, when I went to university and I studied film and TV and visual effects and all this stuff, I still had the same issue where I didn't have music for my films. And so I was constantly torn between these two things, film, but also I need music as well. And yeah, so I had to, out of necessity, really just teach myself how to do both of these things. So I graduated with a degree in film and television from the University of Lincoln. And then I just dove straight into music, and I didn't even touch the film industry. It's really strange.
Okay, wow. That's a very interesting story. I can't say I've spoken to anybody that has this particular kind of background. So that's really cool. So film first and foremost then.
Yeah.
Your whole life, and then music to support the film. But then, so you were kind of anticipating a career in the film industry and then had a kind of change of heart towards music. Like what happened there?
Yeah, so, I mean, I had this direction the whole time. I really wanted to work for a company called Double Negative, who are based in London. Okay. And they do all of the visual effects for Marvel films and all the really cool films. And we got to go visit them, and we had to sign like a non-disclosure agreement, and they'd show us all this stuff, and it was really cool.
Wow.
And then I realized I didn't really want to live in London, and it wasn't something I could do remotely. And whereas cities and towns and different areas in the UK have a music scene, as you know, I don't know if there's necessarily the equivalent for film. Like there's no like film scene to my knowledge.
Yeah,
like,
right. I got you. Yeah.
So it just naturally happened where I just fell into music a bit easier. It was a bit more open mics, that kind of thing. I don't know if there's such a thing as film open mics, but I'd like that if there
I
was.
guess it's just like film is just so much work, right? So I mean, you get like independent film festivals, I guess, but it's still so much work to put one of those together that you can't really just bowl up with your camera and be like, oh, check this out.
Yeah, true. There are lots of crossovers though. So with film, you have to learn how to play with other people, right? So you could do it all yourself. You do a lot of your own things. You probably do most of the parts yourself as well for your own releases, I'd imagine. Yeah. But obviously then it's good to be able to work in a band setting with other musicians and in a session and that kind of thing. And in film, as you say, like, you know, it's a lot of work because you'll have different departments doing different things, and you've got to work with producers, directors, script writers, everything. So even though you can do it all yourself, you still get those skills to learn how to do it with other people.
Yeah, it's cool, man. Really cool. So I'm interested then, like, whilst we're on the topic of learning a little bit more about just about film and what you were doing there. Like, you said that you had this vision of working for like a special effects company, right?
Yeah.
So perhaps you could elaborate a little bit more on like what your initial inspiration was in getting into film, the kind of things that you wanted to do, that kind of thing. I'm really interested.
Yeah. I think I just really like creating my own little worlds and stories and things. And storytelling wise, that came way more naturally in film first than it did with music. And I just love film. Like, I remember when I was a kid and I saw Back to the Future and I was blown away by everything in there. And it's like, I just wanted to do that myself, and I wanted to at least be part of it. And there was this thing where I went to Double Negative and I saw all the effects and everything. I just love how out of the box some of the processes are for doing some of these effects. You don't initially think that's how they're done. You can guess, but when they show you, it's like, wow, that's so cool.
So are we talking, I mean, I assume it's a bit of a mix, but are we talking more like practical effects or like digital effects?
This is more digital, like
with
CGI.
the Marvel stuff, I suppose. Yeah. But I remember like watching documentaries of like the old Star Wars movies and things like that, and all the practical effects that they have is insane.
Yeah. All the miniatures and everything.
Yeah. But I mean, it's all amazing. It's just, as you say, it's just such a incredible like artistic process throughout so many departments. I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling what goes, well, especially what goes into a blockbuster action film like that.
Yeah, and the payoff must be so cool because you'd all get to go watch it, and you'd all go in your own like departments, and you go to the premiere and the screening, and it's got to be so satisfying to see everyone's effort on the screen. You'll be like, oh, I did that shot, or talking about how you had to cover up a mistake by doing something else. Like, that happens all the time. Like in TV, they'll put an effect in to hide a mistake they did or something. I like that.
Man. I can imagine. Yeah. I'm sure there's lots of good like film buff stuff, all the trivia about these kinds of things, man. Yeah. So what kind of have you managed to do much work in film then?
So I've worked on a couple of indie films as like a camera operator and that sort of thing. I also did lots of music video work, but that's not really in the film and TV sector. To be honest, no is the short answer.
Fair
it's
enough.
weird. I wasn't living in a place where that opportunity was there. It's really weird. I came from quite a small town where there wasn't really much to do apart from leave that town. And so,
right. Yeah.
So if I'd moved to, say, Manchester or London or the big cities, you know, where that kind of thing is easier to get into than just location wise, then maybe it would be different.
So you're in Brighton now, right? And is there much of a scene? We already established that there aren't film scenes, but are there any studios and things around there?
So yeah, you're right. I'm in Brighton. I've been here just about 2 years now. And there are studios here, but what I find opportunity wise is, obviously with it being quite a rich music scene, there are lots of musicians that need promo and that want their gigs filmed and stuff. So that's like bread and butter for me at the moment, doing music videos for people. Right.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And that's it. So as you say, you haven't necessarily been working directly in the film industry, but as I kind of said at the start, it kind of bleeds through into everything that you do because you're producing all kinds of content, especially orientated around music. And it all has this fantastic cinematography to it, which clearly is, you know, to do with your background and your passion for that.
Yeah.
As I say, there's something about it, like, well, yeah, you obviously just know what you're doing. Like, you're an actual cinematographer that's making these things, as opposed to the rest of us that are maybe musicians having a go. So yeah, it's really cool, man. I really like that. So, were you in Lincolnshire, did you say, like, your whole life before that, and then like to Brighton a couple of years ago?
Yeah, that's right. I was in Lincolnshire for pretty much my whole life. And it's very flat, and there's not a lot else to do really, apart from complain about how flat it is. But yeah,
I can't. I'm not sure if I've been to Lincolnshire. I can't quite remember, but it's not too far from me right now.
Oh, whereabouts are you?
Well, now I'm in Yorkshire, in North Yorkshire. But I'm originally from Hackney in East London, which is quite a contrast.
Yeah.
At least when I was born there, it's kind of somewhat gentrified now, but when I was born in Hackney, it was not a very nice place to be. But yeah, it's cool. But yeah, Brighton, I love Brighton. I briefly lived there, and I used to visit Brighton a lot because my grandmother lived there when I was a kid. So yeah, Brighton is a great town, and as you say, like, it's full of creatives and music. And yeah, what actually brought you to Brighton then? What made you decide to go there?
So I think the main thing that brought me to Brighton initially was a master's degree that I didn't finish.
Cool.
So when most musicians are aware of the music colleges like BIM and that kind of thing, you know, the Berkeley of the UK, I suppose.
That's it, yeah.
But I went to another one, which was Waterbear. It was fairly new, and it's ran by the same people. And they offered a master's degree in music entrepreneurship. And at this point, I'm really diving into music, and I'm thinking, this is a good decision. How do I monetize what I'm doing and all this sort of thing?
Yeah.
There were some financial complications. I had to drop out. It was a funding thing with student finance. Hooray. But I did meet some fantastic people on that course, and I integrated enough into that network that it was worth me staying here despite the course being over.
Cool. All right, that's really cool. Let's rewind a bit then and follow the music trajectory, because you said you were about 11 years old making films, and that's when you started thinking, okay, I need to put some music here. Yeah. So where did your musical journey begin, and how has that evolved?
So my musical journey, this is going to have to be like a way shorter version, but
it's all basically
right, Back to the Future again seems to be the pinnacle of where both things started. So it got me into film, but also there's that scene where Marty's playing Johnny B. Good on stage.
Well, of course,
it's like, I want to do that. So I had like a cheap guitar from wherever it was from, and I was trying to learn stuff, and I figured out how to play Sweet Child of Mine to impress a girl at school who couldn't care less about me. But I carried on learning anyway. And that was kind of what got me into rock and metal and all that stuff, because that really was the instrument that seemed to center around that genre at the time. So all that stuff. And then with the film stuff and the music, so I'd go online and I'd Google film music, and there'd be these royalty-free websites where there'd be like a song, but then every so often there'd be like a watermark audio preview or something. None of it was usable, obviously, because I couldn't do that. And so I'd try and replicate them best I could just by really listening and thinking, what layers are in this? How can I make something like this? And then I found software like Cubase and all that kind of thing.
Cool. So at this point, you're completely self-educated then? Like, you're basically learning music like that? Like listening to music, trying to work it out?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously most of us did do music at school if we were lucky enough for a school to have that in the curriculum. But I found that the music curriculum I was on in my secondary school didn't really let you play with DAWs or that kind of thing. You could learn an instrument outside of class or whatever, but they didn't nurture.
And then they teach you the same kind of basic music theory thing again and again. That was my experience, at least.
Absolutely.
I don't feel like I really learned anything in music class.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. But that's it. It's the passion that really kind of like makes things happen, though, right? Like music is something that's difficult to kind of read out of a textbook. Like you've got to like have that drive, and for you having your own motivation to work out music and to like make music to go with your films and stuff. That's what really enables you to make that progress, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. But I will say that doing things the wrong way round, which I'll explain shortly, did hold me back quite a bit, and still does to some degree. So I would associate, studying theory in a book with not really developing my musical ability at school, because that was what we were forced into doing, learning the same theory over and over again.
Yeah.
And I just didn't like it. I'd rather be playing an instrument and figuring it out that way. And so for the longest time, I taught myself the instruments without the theory. And sure, I developed technique and I developed, some form of ability on these instruments, but I couldn't then go, oh, that's a major 7 or that's a augmented chord. I didn't know any of the words. And so I had to rely on my lovely network of professional musician friends to help me with that. So I'd play something and say, what is this? And they'd teach me. So
that's cool. Yeah. You kind of fill it in afterwards. I can relate to you so much, man. And I was like self-taught as well. And that quote that you said about how like kind of doing it backwards, and then you sometimes you feel like you're having to play catch up a bit. Like, I know how that one goes, man. But and then you obviously went to music school later. Oh, so you did a bit of a master's. So it wasn't a full year, like a few months or something.
Yeah, that's right. So when I was at secondary school, I had specialized in music, but then I went to university to do film. And then my master's after that university was music again.
So it's always been music and film kind of going between those two then, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right. So you started on guitar, like at what point did other instruments come in? And as you mentioned, like recording on a DAW as well and that stuff.
So drums came shortly after. My parents loved me for that. I had like a mini little drum kit from Argos, I think it was, which is a shop here in the UK. And I learned some beats, nothing amazing, but it was the opportunities that people gave me to play drums in a live setting, whether I was good or not, that eventually got me that mileage so I could develop myself, because I couldn't really play at home. I didn't have a studio or anything like that. And there'd be the odd occasion where there'd be a school gig and I could just kind of play at one of those. And it was during those that I was actually developing myself. So
yeah, that's cool, man. So you were in like doing the school band and things like that. Were you playing in bands as a teenager as well, like outside of that?
Yeah, so I think the first exposure to it was a school band. The original school band, when I joined it, was actually fully woodwind.
Fully woodwind. Wow.
Yeah, fully woodwind. It was like a classical band, and the school wanted this image of prestigious classical, and that's nice. But I joined as a drummer.
Only wins.
But I joined as a drummer, and so for about half a year, the school band was, a very eloquent collective of woodwind instruments and things with a backbeat. And I loved it. I thought this was such a cool mix.
Yeah. Why not, man? Cool. So like fairly early, you're going guitar, drums, and then I guess, the rest just kind of fell into place as you needed to make music, basically, and you're doing it all yourself pretty much.
Yeah. Like in the DAW situation, so that was just something I got on my laptop. I could put headphones on and not disturb anyone with. And I was playing with MIDI and software instruments and things. At one point, if I wanted a bass guitar, I would literally record a regular guitar and then drop the pitch by 12. You've probably done that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But then,
that's it.
Yeah. So I just kind of figured it out through YouTube or through just guessing, and here I am.
Cool, man. So, but were you playing in any bands like outside of the school band, like originals bands or maybe covers bands?
Not really. No, I don't think I was. To think about it, I had friends that wanted to jam and stuff, but there were no bands.
Fair dues. Cool, man. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. So then that's kind of like pretty much that all the way through to then film at university, and then it's the masters at Brighton, and then it's been like, you know, dove really into music, and then you've been involved in loads of projects, right? And like you play live a lot with a lot of different people, and I'm curious just to get a bit of a breakdown of all the different things that you're involved in and different roles you play as well.
Yeah, okay, cool. So when I think I just had this thirst to do it when I moved here, because it hadn't been satiated before I moved here. So I just had these, you know, I had this drive to just say yes to anything at one point. And at one point I did say yes to everything. So I was in a function band, I was in like a metal thing, I was in like a jazz thing. There's just like little bands that would play venues and stuff and get paid okay for it, and then crack on. And obviously with it being a city that has lots of music students, there'd be a fresh turnaround of new musicians every couple of years or so. So it never never got dull or stale or any of that. But right now, so I'm in 2 function bands, one as a bassist, one as a drummer. I drum for a metal musician that you know, Archie Caine.
For sure. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then I just release my own stuff in the gaps while sessioning for whoever wants it.
Right. Okay, cool. So the rest is like sessions. Because, yeah, I see you kind of popping up here, there, and everywhere on every different instrument in the band.
Yeah. Well, someone will see a video I put up and they'll say, oh, let's ask him to come and see what happens. And then there'll be a spontaneous big like beach gig that will happen. That happened last year. That was quite fun. I just brought my bass guitar and plugged in, and it was a really fun time. Cool,
man. Yeah, wicked. Yeah, nice. And then, as you mentioned, you've got like your own solo music as well. You actually have an album, is it like all the way back in 2015, right? That's the first one that I found for you on Spotify and stuff under your own name.
Yeah.
So where were you at in 2015 then? Was that, it must have been around uni or even before that maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first ever release was called Reflectivity. That's the one. And I made that whilst studying film at university.
Right.
Mostly because my musical side wasn't getting stimulated and I was doing full film and I wanted to balance it still. And all the music I'd made up until that point was instrumental for film. It wasn't very radio friendly or, commercial in that sense. And the album initially was going to be fully instrumental, but the girl I was seeing at the time was like, no one's going to listen to instrumental music. Add some lyrics. So I did in like 2 weeks. They weren't very good. But I want to remaster and redo that album with what I know now. Because, I definitely took some shortcuts back then.
Sure. Well, I mean, we all evolved. That's a long time ago, like 8 years already. Long time, I think, before I managed to release anything as well. So it's cool to hear that journey, that progress. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but then 2020, and then you released a single, and then a bunch more as well in 2022, right? So, what's the kind of is that you like at home, like you're recording your own stuff, like now being situated in Brighton?
Yeah. So I actually had. You won't know this, but I had a couple of albums released in 2018, 19, and then 2020 as well. However, I took them all offline because I didn't like how I'd mixed them.
Yeah.
Even though they were fine.
I'm sure they were, man.
And I'm really sad because I don't have the original Logic Pro sessions anymore, so I've got to redo them.
Wait, so you like deleted the albums?
I deleted them off of streaming platforms. Unfortunately, a hard drive that had all my work on got stolen. So, yeah.
So you've like lost those albums, basically?
They're gone, yeah.
Oh, man, that's tragic, man.
They're in here, though.
Okay, yeah, fair. That's something. Yeah. Wow. So you've been pretty prolific then with music over the years. That's really cool.
I have ideas in my head that I want to get out there on and commit to a recording of some sort. So and then with 2020, I don't know what you were doing in 2020, but for me, I was trying to collaborate online with as many people as possible because I just missed it.
Right. What did you call it? The jam Yeah,
Jamdemic project.
The Jamdemic. Yeah. Really cool, man. Yeah, cool. Let's get into that, man. Like you did a bunch of those, right? And I saw them on your YouTube channel. And that.
That's right. Yeah, I did like an episodic thing where I would just reach out to people that I knew played various instruments, and I was like, let's cover this song, but do it differently. Or I don't know, there was a girl called Alex who sent me a video of her performing with a ukulele in her car. I think it was in like a McDonald's car park or something. And I just had to like add to it and stuff. And that was really cool. Like people that follow me then got to see her and vice versa. And it just became this nice big network of bringing strangers together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Yeah, uniting people in that time where everyone's isolated and whatnot. So it's a good initiative, man. Cool. And so you really kind of take on like a producer role doing work like that, like in your own music and in putting together projects like that. You're coordinating different people getting their parts. You're producing it. You're mixing and mastering and stuff all yourself as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool, man. So is music production, is that a passion of yours?
I think it's a necessity of mine.
Like, yeah, fair dude.
Because I mean, it's like I could practice getting my timing perfect, but the computer will always say no, sort of thing. So yeah, and I want to know how to make people I work with sound their best, sort of thing. And I feel like if I know how to do that, then I can do a service to their sound and their musical direction too. So.
Cool. So have you produced any records for others other than like the jam kind of stuff?
I have actually, yes. I've produced a few things for friends of mine, mostly neo-soul, jazzy stuff.
Awesome. Awesome.
In the archive somewhere. But
Cool,
it's more
man.
featuring as a musician at the moment, as an instrumentalist on other people's stuff.
Right.
A lot of people tend to pay sound engineers for mixing and mastering, which is brilliant. Love that. And that could even be something I explore one day as well.
Cool. But the main one for you is being like a session musician playing on. So, and obviously you mentioned about the live gigs that you do. Do you do more recorded work as well? Like, what's the kind of proportion there of live to recording?
I think the proportion of live to recording is probably more live at the moment than recording, especially when it comes to other people's stuff. So that's more if other people happen to decide I'm a good fit for a project, and then I'll slot in and then we'll do something. And but then with the live stuff, usually that's with people that I have a longer standing connection with, and we're more in a position to gig frequently because we have something committed. So, for example, I am Archie's drummer. Etc. But if I was going to record on someone's album, I might be their studio drummer, but I'm not their tour drummer, for example.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Got you, man. Got you. And another thing, I think, is it right in saying that you kind of play a role, especially in a live band, as like a musical director or something like that? Like you're kind of a band leader in that kind of setting, right?
Absolutely. That's where I thrive 100% in a live setting. So my thing recently with a lot of artists has been the drummer that I also cue the click tracks, keep everyone tight, make sure we're all good, that sort of thing. So lots of in-ears and lots of backing tracks and that kind of thing. Problem solving.
Yeah, I think one of the first things we ever interacted on was like you made a video about, I think, your Ableton session for the live setup. I think it was for Archie. And like the setup there. And I just remember thinking that it was really good. It was just like a really good tutorial. Cause I remember in the past when I was playing live, like really trying to find good information about that kind of thing. So yeah, I remember thinking it was really cool that you were doing that. And then, getting that perception of the fact that you were kind of the one to produce these like projects for the live show and hold the band together like that. That's really cool, man.
Oh, that's so kind of you to say. And I make it literally because I am just like you. I really struggle to find content that's free, for example, that actually accurately describes the process and tells you what you need and walks you through the steps. And and I don't know if a lot of that exists. So I just wanted to put something out there and see if it helps someone.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, I think you're a natural at it. I mean, that's kind of what it's not necessarily very eloquent, but when I say that, like how your stuff looks really good, I think it's just the fact that you have this really like clean cinematography background that makes your videos look so good. You know, you speak well, you know, you're a well-spoken Englishman, you know, so it presents well, and then you're super knowledgeable about those things. So yeah, like I think that content like that comes out really great from you, man. It's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure, man. So yeah, that's really cool. So I guess with you knowing loads of other musicians as well, like as a kind of band director, are you also like helping get other musicians into other bands and things like that?
There's definitely a time when you can then make a recommendation for a musician if you need one. So there was a project not too long ago, last year, called Mima. Fantastic artist. She does kind of rappy, edgy stuff. And I joined as a drummer. And the initial setup was me on drums, her singing, rapping, all that stuff with backing tracks. But we really thought we needed the energy of a live guitarist and that sort of thing.
Right.
And I was in a couple of things at the time. And I realized there'd be a good fit for one of the projects. So I got one of the guitarists from something else on this. And he ended up gigging with us at the Albany and this sort of thing. And yeah, so
makes sense.
If someone is a good fit and you kind of, you know the material and you kind of know where the artist is trying to go with it, then you know who to recommend usually.
That's cool. That's cool. And so this one might be a little bit of a, is a rabbit hole here, I guess, but the impression I get is that you have a very, very diverse taste of music. Not only taste, but just like ability and everything that you play. So, I mean, I don't know how we can approach this one, but like, what kind of music are you into?
Oh, gosh.
Everything? What are you not into? How should we tackle this?
What am I not into? That's a good question. You are right. That's really funny. I love jazz. I love funk. I love disco. I love rock. I love metal.
Wow.
I love rap.
Yeah.
I love it all. Like,
yeah, cool.
You can learn so much from listening to a bit of everything.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm with you. Yeah,
but the issue is that I feel like an imposter at every gig.
Oh no, because you don't identify with any one thing. Is that right?
Really. Because like I want to, like I love being able to say I'm in specific communities because it's nice to feel included and be part of a group sort of thing. But I feel like an imposter in every situation. So recently, last year I did a gig with Archie. So Archie Caine, we were on the same bill as Tiberius and Azure and Gaia, all these really amazing metal artists.
Yeah.
I'd not long ago done like a jazz trio thing just out of necessity. And I felt, whilst I can play metal, it's like, do I really belong on this stage with these people who've committed to this genre and this lifestyle? And it's,
I can imagine that. That's an interesting position to be in. I can empathize. Although I'm sure that everybody respects you in every regard, because I mean that takes one hell of a musician to be able to do all of these different things.
True. So, it is fun as well to bust out something that is typically for jazz in like a metal context, because it's amazing.
It keeps it creative. Yeah, for sure, man. Like that's it, because that is the kind of downside of being very dialed into one niche, right? Is that it does get repetitive, you know, and everyone kind of does the metal thing or whatever it is, you know. So yeah, I think it's really good. Yeah, I know that I definitely like to do, like, there's definitely a difference when you have, like, for instance, metalheads that only listen to metal and therefore they kind of do that thing, you know. And I think that it's always generally more interesting when you're blending other elements and influences from other places, wherever they might be, because that just keeps it fresh, keeps it creative.
Yeah.
So that's cool. But like you mentioned that, like, when you started playing, it was kind of like rock, and you said like Sweet Child of Mine and stuff like that. Was that your kind of foundational place, or were you just always interested in everything?
I think I was always interested in everything, but the guitar at the time in my young child brain was like, this is a rock instrument, so I'm going to learn that. And so I listened to Metallica and Black Sabbath and Guns N' Roses and all that stuff.
Nice.
And weirdly as well, this is another thing how film has helped me get into metal is because symphonic metal, to be more specific, is because a lot of movie trailer music tends to be really epic rock orchestra stuff.
Impact stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, the marrying of a rock or metal band and an orchestra, so Nightwish, for example. Like,
yeah.
Oh, I love it. It's great.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, gotta love that. It's just like a very big sound, right? So if you want to go like full sort of impact epic, especially like, I guess, as you say, if you're a film guy, you know, if you're kind of going for the epic fantasy or whatever, then symphonic metal it's just like the ultimate soundtrack, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the things that I loved about working with, and I still do obviously work with Archie on shameless plug, Tom and the Angels.
Oh yeah. It's all right, nothing shameless. No shame, man, no shame.
Huzzah. No, it's
I love this record, man. I've listened to it a bunch. I actually listened to it again, not too long ago, like last week or something. I had a listen in my headphones. It was actually quite late at night, and I thought, whatever it was, I thought like, I'm gonna go check that out again. I love that one. But in that instance, you're in Archie's live band, right?
Yeah, so all the music and actual album performances were done by Bo, Holly, and Adrian, and a couple other people that we know.
Adrian,
so
Adrian
it's my
and Diego
job to then
in
Paraguay, wasn't it?
Paraguay, that's the one. Yeah. Cool.
So it's my job to do them a service on stage and try and keep it as close to what they've done at all. There's always a joke that I have with Bo and Holly about the timing for chains, because I think there's a bar of 6/4, then 5/4, then 6/4, and then 4/4, and then 3/4, and it's
So right, so when you're doing that in your project, then like on Ableton, are you mapping that or like all the way through, or do you just play it? You play it without the accent. You're mapping it all the way through, aren't you?
I'm mapping it, yeah. So
yeah.
There's two ways of doing it. So there's one way that failed, which I'm really sad about, and it actually did come from the Ableton rig that you saw in that video. So Ableton sometimes has this lovely glitch where it will add an extra click for no reason. So cool. And then it decided to not play it at all. So that's using the Ableton built-in metronome. So I'd mapped all the time signatures out and the BPMs, and it was just going to play through. Yeah, it didn't serve me well on stage. I think we did 5 songs perfectly well, and then the last one, no click at all and no backing track. And it just... Man,
it's gut-wrenching when the track goes, man. Like, The last year I had of playing live in a band, we were using a track on everything, and oh my God, man. It was normally okay, but there was always this anxiety that it was going to back up. And I remember one time it did so bad, man. Like on like the opening song, we had to like start our set again, man.
Oh no.
It was, oh God. I still have nightmares about, about that, man.
Well, now I try and save it by, I'll bake a click track into just one WAV file, and I'll just play that with the track.
That makes so much sense. Yeah.
But that was a learning curve.
I might have done that actually. Yeah. It was a while ago now, but yeah. As you say, live and learn. No, that's cool, man. I mean, like, I get what you say. I mean, in an ideal world, you like program all of these different time signature changes, and I do that sometimes. But sometimes, especially if it's changing a lot, I just turn the accent off and just let it play through.
Just count.
Yeah, man. Well, yeah, I mean, in a recording setting, at least, like I'm not really playing live anymore. So yeah. No, cool, man. Yeah. And then like, is it recently you've picked up saxophone and stuff as well?
Yeah, very recently I've picked that up. I can pick it up.
I remember. Right, oh yeah. Yeah, it's nicely in frame here. Yeah. I remember like, you just posting something of you now with the saxophone. And I think I remember an interaction where like you just suddenly were now playing saxophone. And I remember commenting saying like, are there any instruments that you don't play? Like, or like, can you like, are you learning to play every instrument? And you said something to the degree of like, that's the idea.
Yeah.
Something like that.
That's the goal. That's probably what I said. Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, what is the goal? What are your goals? What would you like to do moving forward and achieve?
I just want to stay employable. That's basically it. Yeah, as like a performing musician in any context. And I think especially as someone who often musically directs, to have an actual understanding of the instrument that someone's playing puts you in a better position to have a better interaction with that musician. So I can't really tell a saxophonist what to do at this point because I don't know if that's possible. You know, like there are some notes you just can't play on a saxophone and they're all in different transpositions. But if I can play it myself, then I can kind of empathize when I'm speaking with them about the solutions to any issues they're having or that sort of thing.
I think it's especially cool. Like it makes a lot of sense that, yeah, obviously every instrument has its own specifics, but like a wind instrument is like a totally different thing from somebody who's been playing guitar, drums. Like I think a lot of us start like that. Like you and I, we started as guitarists, you know, we can kind of then start to pick up some keys to go with that. And then we can play bass. Again, obviously there's a nuance to playing bass as a bass player, you know, instead of as a guitarist, but you know, you can mash it out. Drums, like, yeah, we can like drum a beat out, but then like, I've always kind of thought, especially wind, that's probably the other end of the spectrum. Like I really wouldn't know how to tell a wind player how to play. So I guess at least if you get saxophone, you kind of unlock at least a bit more of that whole spectrum of instruments, I suppose. Yeah.
But it's weird because you have to really think completely differently you have to almost forget everything you know about musical instruments. So chromatic scales, right? So on a guitar, if we were going to do that, we're just going up every single fret until we run out. But on a saxophone, all the notes are in a weird order. So on a saxophone, you've obviously got all of these holes that you close with the keys. Right, but you can't just close each one in order. That doesn't get you a chromatic scale.
Yeah, wow.
It doesn't make any sense.
That would be sweet, wouldn't it? But yeah, I suppose so it gets a lot more complicated. Plus the breath technique, which is like a entire thing that you just don't need playing guitar.
Yeah, if I was on a saxophone, if I was playing an A or something. So on a guitar, if I was going to demonstrate this, so if I played an A on a saxophone, but decided to give it way too much air, I get this. Like it just goes way up there.
Right, it goes sharp. Yeah. That's another interesting thing, the pitching and like, and do you tune it as well, or is it all
so the saxophone is transposed to a specific note. I'm that early to the instrument that I can't remember.
Yeah, that's cool, man. No more than me.
I know that alto and tenor are tuned differently.
Right, yeah.
So if you play an F on an alto, you get a different concert note, for example.
Right, yeah.
Which is really fun.
But then like, so you don't have to, do you tune the instrument or is it all down to like your breath?
The only real tuning you can do, because there is no way to tune a saxophone, it's just a tube with holes in it. But the only thing you can do to affect the pitch that isn't your breath is where your mouthpiece sits. So I blow air through this mouthpiece. If the mouthpiece is further this way, then the saxophone is technically longer and therefore the pitch is lower. And if I brought the mouthpiece in, well, that's making a micro adjustment in the other direction. So if I'm a bit flat or a bit sharp, then I can just move where the mouthpiece is.
Right. Interesting.
But that's it.
Interesting. So like, this is kind of bizarre and random, but like, I record almost all of my music not at concert pitch, 440 hertz. I record practically everything at 432 hertz, which is most people probably just don't know about. Like, and it goes like over their head.
Is this the meditation spectrum?
That's kind of the idea. Like, it kind of goes into like like sound therapy, like kind of like healing vibrations, this kind of thing. I mean, I'm not necessarily doing it because of that. I think that initially influenced me years ago when I was still playing with a band and we decided to tune all our instruments to 432 instead. But then it just stayed with me ever since that, like, because all the music I make is conceptual, we kind of like keep all of it, or at least most of it, in this like practically like our own conceptual pitch standard that is separate from the regular one. But it is obviously strange. And so I was curious, like, because most people wouldn't know that, and they'd listen to the music, and if you tried to play along, you'd be out of tune, right? Without knowing. So how would you navigate that on the sax? Would you literally just
I would just push the mouthpiece in a bit.
Right, and then just like it makes it a bit flatter. Cool.
Yeah, my very limited understanding on this, and it's so cool that you do that. I love that because I just record it 440 like a basic person. But
well, like that's I wouldn't necessarily recommend that people do that, but I just have been doing it so long now that like I'm almost stuck with it.
I love it. That's so cool.
But, yeah, it's
am I right in thinking if you played a C, for example, then on a piano, would the note you actually hear be between C and C sharp?
So the note in the music is ever so slightly flatter.
Okay.
So like if you played like a standard C at 440, then if you were playing along with a C in like a recorded piece of music that I've got out, the note you're playing would be slightly sharp.
Yeah,
like
the
very
B would
slightly.
Be too flat.
Far too flat. Yeah. It's definitely not as flat as a semitone down. Yeah.
That's
so it is.
cool.
It is strangely suspended in between notes. Yeah. That's
awesome.
Yeah, something different. In like it's a lot more common in like Eastern music, especially. They don't really abide so much to the 440 pitch standard. Also, the 440 pitch standard was only actually brought in the 20th century. So I mean, like classical music and orchestras prior to that played in a wide range of different kind of pitch standards. And I think they sometimes refer to the 432 as like Verdi tuning, because supposedly that's what he felt was the optimal point.
Wow.
Yeah, it's cool because of the way that like it's the way that all the tones were add up. So if you're in like 440, the notes by hertz, they're all at like strange decimal points. Whereas when you tune it to 432, it kind of like all rounds out. And it's got all of this kind of theoretical stuff about like solfeggio tones and,
Is that like microtonal stuff or?
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the thing is like, you're sort of tuning in between tones. Like it's kind of microtonal. Obviously, like if you're playing a piano or whatever, like it's still tuned in proportion to itself, so
with these two pianos, so if I had this bottom one in standard 440 and then I tuned this one to 432, could I effectively double every note?
No, it would sound hideous. It would sound really out of tune. Really, really out of tune. It's strange. It's like it's definitely just enough to create a really unnerving dissonance, but you don't understand what's going on. You know what I mean? If you do that, yeah. So you got to be all 432 or all 440 or whatever else you're going for, I suppose. But yeah.
After this, I think I might experiment with hearing what playing in 432 sounds like. That's really cool. I love that. Yeah,
it's something different. If it inspires you, then it's cool. I knew that I liked that. Like I started with just tuning the guitar down that way when we were playing live. And it just felt a bit much to go all the way to like a half step down, but just to like round it off that bit, just felt nice at the time, I suppose. And something different.
Very cool.
Yeah, cool, man. So speaking of which, there's another thing that I'm really interested in, which is the whole notion of minimalism, in that you have this like, your handle of He's a Minimalist, your website, he's a minimalist.com. So you seem to have this concept of minimalism kind of front and center. And I think that that's very interesting as well, considering how that might also play into your like musical approach, your film, all of that. So perhaps you could enlighten me a little bit more on this notion of minimalism.
Sure. This is a heavily debated thing at the moment with me. I'm due to put some videos out to clarify how my definitions are changing, because they've definitely had to change as I've accumulated more instruments, right? So minimalism.
As you become less minimalistic.
Well, yeah, this is it. So as a
Right.
minimalist, if you will, initially most people will just think that means you don't have anything, right? You don't have a bed, you've not got furniture, etc. And that is true for a lot of people. That's kind of what we now call extreme minimalism, even though that's what it is. Minimalism is also a visual aesthetic. So just, one color palette or only having green things in your room, like that could be minimalism. But really what minimalism is about is taking up as little space as possible, and you can bend that however you need. It's also about being essential. So only having things that bring you joy or serve you a purpose, sort of thing. Now, I could argue that if I had, one of each guitar, then that's making me very happy. But it's not necessarily essential. So when picking my instruments and things, and when teaching myself things, I've had to apply minimalism to that process. So, for example, I can play drums on a keyboard. You probably can too, using MIDI patches and things. So that's kind of removing my need to have an actual drum kit. So I can do it all on that. You also, when you will produce music, will use different software instruments and libraries. You don't have to have a violin or a string quartet, because you can just pull up a patch on here and do that. So that's minimalism in a sense as well. But then when I got into gigging and things, I very quickly realized I needed a real drum kit. And so I decided to just pick the smallest one I could find. So I have like a small drum kit. It's like a small club kit almost. It's only like an 18-inch kick drum. Most people I know have like 22 or bigger. And then really
it's not
small
about
size. It's how you use it. Yeah, absolutely. I've only got one crash cymbal. I've only got one ride cymbal. All the drummers I know in my network are just kitted out and stuff. And I get very jealous, but I enjoy my creativity in limiting myself that way. Yeah. And then with the film side of things and minimalism. So minimalism, there's actually a film on Netflix that's been done about this, which was done on The Minimalists, who are these two people called Joshua Fields Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus. In fact, I've got the book. 2 seconds. I'm going to grab it.
Sounds cool.
Actually, it's just over here. I have two books. Oh, all right, I'll try that again. So, there was a book written by two minimalists. It was Joshua Fields Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus, and these are dubbed The Minimalists. And they've kind of brought minimalism into focus for a lot of people in terms of making it a conversation. So on Netflix, you can watch a film about it and about their approach. But it was made by a filmmaker called Matt Diavella, who extensively covered the making of process of that film and his own struggles with calling himself a minimalist when he's got, 5 cameras and all these cables and 20 microphones and stuff. And for ages, when I was making films, I would use GoPros. I wouldn't have anything fancy and big and whatever. And I would just try and figure out how to grade the footage to look like it was filmed on a bigger camera. And I'd use all these techniques I learned when I went to film school on really small cameras to try and make them feel more cinematic, even though that's not their use case. Now I do have a very nice camera rig, and I use it for corporate client things, because you can't show up at a professional shoot with a GoPro. So it looks better if you have a proper camera rig. But that was only something I bought 2 years ago, if that, in Brighton.
Okay, cool. So is minimalism something that you've been interested in and practicing for a long time?
Yeah, I've been practicing it since 2017.
Cool, yeah.
So quite a while, actually.
Quite a long time, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I find that very interesting. So what would you call it? Like a is it like a philosophy or a way of? No. Is it a cult? Yeah.
We are a cult. You have to be bold and drink coffee to join.
Okay.
No, it's definitely a lifestyle. That's the
lifestyle.
Thing.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. A lifestyle. Yeah, I find that really interesting. So So then as a minimalist, yeah, you have to weigh up these things. I guess you're taking a minimalistic approach to most things, I guess, in life is the idea.
Yeah.
And then you're having to sort of come to terms with at what point you might need to compromise such minimalism.
Yeah. Well, for example, if you love books and you want to have, a massive bookshelf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be
but
the
you still want to be a minimalist. I think that's fine. I think you can still say you're a minimalist and have loads of books. But then it's like some people buy books just to make it look like they read them. Like that's the thing.
Okay. Yeah.
So they wouldn't be
like
minimalist.
Furniture.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah, because it's that essence of essentialism, right? Like, so everything needs to kind of serve a purpose.
Yeah. And also the things you buy need to be because you want them and not because advertisers have made you think you want them.
Oh,
so
gosh. Yeah.
It's that thing about what
my psychology rejects that so hard, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people, I hope, can tune that stuff out. The which power tool makes me a real man, or which car makes me the most successful mum or something, like, because these are things that advertisers try and make you feel are relevant.
I think that advertising is very, very successful, man. I think that unfortunately the grand majority of people seem to fall for it, whether it's like whether they know it or not.
Yeah.
But I can definitely relate with that.
Have you yourself ever worked in retail and stuff?
Retail? No, I didn't work in retail. I did work in some like customer facing jobs. I worked in like bars and things like that when I was a bit younger. But I have explored a lot just about sales, marketing. I did actually work a sales job. Funnily enough, even when I was in Brighton, I was just looking for any job I could get, and I got like a call center type job and did a load of sales training, things like that. But I'm interested a lot in psychology, and I have read a lot about sales psychology and advertising, branding, mostly for the kind of entrepreneurship type stuff. But I do find it interesting. I find it interesting almost in its own kind of like art form, but then it also kind of makes me feel a bit sick in that, like, I definitely can't, as I say, my psychology really rejects this kind of thing where I don't like feeling like I'm sort of being manipulated into doing something or wanting something, or I think that I am definitely quite essentialist in that way. Like, I don't really like buying things. I don't buy things for pleasure, for like, because I saw it on Instagram and I'm like, oh, I need that. And, like that category's been opened up in my mind, and now I need that dopamine hit to feel complete. Like, I definitely have this kind of rejection to that, but I think that for most people, it kind of works somewhat that way.
Yeah, well, you just said all the right things to gain entry into the cult.
That's it. I just need to shave. I need to shave my head now. I like a coffee. I just
and then you're in.
Nice, sweet, man. So, have you worked in retail, done that kind of stuff as well, or?
Oh gosh, yeah, I have. I'm the opposite of you. I actually really wanted to work in bars and never could get the jobs, and so I ended up working in call centers and retail and customer facing things. And to call back to you talking about the psychology of sales and stuff, we were definitely taught some really, really dodgy things when talking to customers.
Like the dodgy stuff, man. I don't like manipulative sales, man, and I don't like manipulative behavior anyway. Like, who does?
But we were taught the yes technique by like industry professionals. They would come in and they would do a whole thing about the yes technique, and it's about making someone say the word yes on the phone 3 times before you even sell them something. The idea of them agreeing with you is so bad.
I think there was a book. I think that it was in that book. There's a famous book by Robert Cialdini called Influence, or something like that, The Art of Influence, something along those lines. And it was basically based off of loads of studies, and it was just like a book full of things exactly like that, like getting somebody to say yes, 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 because then they're psychologically in like agreeable mode, Yeah. And it talks about these like click word tapes where you can basically like plug into people's automated responses and things like that. And yeah, it is kind of, there is a there's definitely a territory there where it feels kind of icky because you're really just trying to like exploit people at a certain point.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is something I actually talk about a lot with people currently, just in regular conversation, because it's come up that basically, when I was working in sales and stuff, it was very competitive, and it was very, who has the biggest sale, and therefore who gets the biggest bonus. And I feel like a lot of life, general life anyway, is this competition. From the moment you learn how to write your name, it's a contest, like who's the teacher's pet, who has the best clothes, who,
I guess, school with a grading system, and
and then do you go to uni? Do you get a job? Like there's all these like suggestions of what the right way to do things is. And I just, like you do, fully reject that system of I have to follow this template. And and then when I became a musician full time, I actually identified that there is still that element of competition in there still. So it's now who plays the best gigs, and who's got that Meinl endorsement, or stuff like that.
But I suppose to a certain degree it's human nature, and you can't help that, I guess.
Yeah, you have to come to terms with the fact that it's always going to be a bit of a contest, because that's survival, right? And also that drive to better yourself. Like I see people that can shred on saxophone, and I don't get sad about it. It makes me want to do it. So
that's it.
I pick it up.
Yeah, and that's it. You got to choose the positive mindset for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think stepping away from that negative view of it is really helpful, and then realizing that it's inevitable. Music doesn't hurt anyone unless like you've had a song written about you by like Taylor Swift or something. Like that's gonna hurt. But usually music doesn't hurt people, and so that's the only real comparison I can make.
That's really cool, man. That's really cool. So do you think that minimalism is a big part of like helping you kind of stay grounded in that way and come back to an approach that you can kind of rely on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does. It's helped me to simplify and to best I can not overthink. Everyone has, bad days and stuff, but I think overthinking happens a lot less when you kind of simplify.
Yeah. That's really cool. I really like that. I think that a lot of creative people like us have this tendency to like overthink and, just kind of tied into anxiety and all other kinds of, the fact that like to become musicians, we must be probably at least a little bit mental.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that thing about the stuff you put out now, right? You're probably at some point going to hyper listen to your stuff or obsess over the bass EQ or like, the balance of all these instruments. Yeah. And you really get yourself into a thing about it. And then, but if you realize that in 10 years from now, you'll probably have a completely new technique that's even better. So it doesn't mean you shouldn't put it out now, because you probably won't like it in 10 years anyway.
Exactly, man. Like, yeah, that's it. Like I that's the kind of perfectionist thing, right? Because I know there was one thing that really hit me one time. I was always quite a perfectionist, and this notion that perfectionism is really just kind of a form of procrastination. And that's the thing, is like that kind of stuff, it can like hold us back a lot. Like, that's the thing, as artists, I think we can be generally prone to self-sabotaging behavior, so the more we can like get out of our own way, the better.
Absolutely. That's the best I think anyone's ever put that.
Oh, well, cool. Thanks, man. But like, so that's really cool. I'm really interested in the minimalist stuff. It's not something that I wouldn't say I really know much about. As you said, maybe there's this idea that a minimalist is someone that just lives in like owns like 4 things or something. But I do like that. And it's a mentality that I kind of like try to take on more and more for the most part. Within a context of music production, I've always found that to be an interesting debate, because obviously I make a lot of like kind of, I don't know, symphonic metal type music or progressive metal, where I've always had this tendency to kind of be a little bit of almost like an opposite, like a maximalist, right? Like throw everything at it and the kitchen sink, like massive wall of sound and huge reverbs that just like go all over the place. And I always found that interesting because you have a producer like Rick Rubin, I think probably most famously, who is really all about that kind of simplification, that kind of like minimalism. And what's interesting is that doesn't mean, again, that there's only like 4 things at any given time going on. Like sometimes there's some really interesting arrangements happening, but like, I mean, everything that guy produced sounds like really, really good. And he's produced so many things that have been just like, it's had massive impact, so like, I've always been really fascinated by that. There was like a famous controversy, I think, where Muse, I don't know if you know about this. I think like Muse won an award for a record they self-produced that for like best production or something. And they like
really?
they on the stage said like F you, Rick Rubin, because they had obviously gone opposite and just like kind of been maximalist with it. Yeah, I don't know. Are you a fan of Rick Rubin? And I assume you have a similar kind of approach with production.
So to be honest, I didn't know about any of that stuff. Oh God, I stumbled through that sentence. I'll say that again. So to be honest, I didn't know about any of that stuff. But it's very true in that sometimes you have to maybe go big in a mix. Although I think still, even if you go big, like stuff you're doing with the symphonic things, and there's all these layers and arrangements and things, I think you're still subtractive EQing things and getting rid of the frequencies that don't need to be there. And like every layer is serving a purpose. So this violin, melody is doing this, and then this counter melody is doing that. And you can have hundreds of layers on your session and it can all still be essential to what you're doing.
Yeah. Fair enough. That's cool, man. That's cool. I just know that, like, especially like a famous example with Rick Rubin was he produced the Red Hot Chili Peppers album, Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic. Well, I think he produced everyone after that, actually.
Wow.
But that was a really big breakthrough record. I mean, that changed rock music like completely, pretty much. Like, it's because that was the moment, like in the 80s, you had all of these big like reverby drums and everything had that kind of huge sound. And then like Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic came out in 91, I think. And like, it was so like dry, and like really like just like big upfront, clean, like vocals were totally dry, like not even any reverb. And yeah, like that completely like shifted production in the 90s, and yeah. And I think that was really cool. And there's a documentary on them producing that, I think, where Rick Rubin is like, yeah, he's really kind of like refraining the players, like Flea has obviously this tendency, like he can go crazy all the time. He can like shred the bass like anyone, and the way that he gets him to boil it, like the riff that he's playing in Give It Away, I think, doom ba doom boom, and he was kind of like doing all this like, more stuff, and then and the way he gets him to boil it down to the essentials, and the way that makes the song like really groove, like, yeah, super cool, man. I like pick that up in the things that you do, like, because I think that not only do you play really well in all your instruments, like you play with such groove, such feel, like as a drummer, as a bassist, like in all those instruments, like obviously you got the soul influence, funk, and all of those things. So yeah, I guess that's why all of these things came to mind.
Oh yeah, well no, you're right. When you're on stage, you've probably had this as well. There's the urge to just go crazy, like to do the best solo. Like Valerie, if you play Valerie in a function band, it doesn't need a sweep picking solo, but and I know people that do for a laugh. But like, if you just play what's needed and what actually brings the song home, then that's all you need to do. You could just play a 4/4 groove for the whole song. Famously, in fact, who is it that does it? He says famously, and then it leaves his brain.
Famously,
Famously, it's in there. Oh, who did
We're
the
talking
song
about
Gaslighting Abby?
Gaslighting Abbey.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I need
if
to
I'm
actually just
familiar with
quickly
that
look at who the artist is because it's important.
one.
Hold on.
Do it.
Gaslighting Abby. Steely Dan. There we go. Right.
Oh,
So,
wow. I love Steely Dan, man. I listen to them all the time. I should have got that one.
cool.
Yeah.
Right. I'll flip back. So, famously, there's a Steely Dan track called Gaslighting Abbey that is just all groove and there's never a crash cymbal in the entire song.
Right.
There's no like break and then we're back in with a big crash cymbal. It's just a groove all the way through. And it's the most stripped back, chilled out thing. And it never gets to that point, but it's cool that it never gets to that point.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, Steely Dan is a great example of a band with a lot of feel. Like all the musicians they had with that, like, yeah, really, really grooves. And I guess that's the thing is like you can be like an excellent musician with like refrain. You know what I mean? Like just by as you say, like pulling back, serving the song. If anything, a more amateur musician could potentially shred all over it, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
Nice. Yeah, so that's cool, man. That's cool. And you said to me as well, like before we started filming this episode, you mentioned about like mutual connections and things that we have. So
yeah. How do you know Archie and all of this brilliant crowd? How do you know them?
So, I mean, I know most people these days literally through the wonders of the internet. Even despite the fact that these people are, you know, British and such. There was a time back in the day, well, at least just a few years ago, that I literally went out to gigs every single night. You know, I was in London and like every night I'd be at another gig and I met loads of musicians and I networked with people and it was great. But I totally burned out from that and like changed up what I was kind of doing in life, moved out of London. And so I have in more recent times focused on kind of doing a similar thing, but on the internet. I think that, like, I mean, I'm assuming for you, like, you've kind of done that more in person, like, in Brighton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for this particular crowd, I think Pete I became connected with first, I think, quite a while ago, actually, like, you know, over more than a couple of years ago, 2 to 3 years ago now.
Was that Three Crown Solace or was that just?
No, Crown Solace is quite new, actually. It was quite a long time before. He was literally on Instagram, a few years ago and all he had was like, he was just singing videos like on his Instagram stories mostly, or he'd post them occasionally. And yeah, just like a really, really exceptional singer, obviously, like anybody that's heard Pete knows that. And very like unique as well in his voice and his range and stuff. So he definitely just stood out to me a lot. And I think that he was also really good at like finding anybody that was sort of involved in symphonic metal and that kind of style. So we'd come across each other at some point. And then I noticed that like, so my wife, we also had a project that she was like managing that Instagram and stuff. Yarima it's called. And like, so I think we had like separately both come across Pete. And he was like following both of us or whatever. And at one point we're like, oh yeah, this guy, check him out. Chat with Pete, he's like super, super nice guy. So was just like really friendly with him for a while. And then just like, yeah, man, at some point we should do something together. So yeah, I kind of mostly just met that way. And then literally for like, yeah, like best part of 3 years or something now, just been in touch with each other. And then from there, we're both kind of networking with people online, and if a new artist comes up or a band or whatever, then both of us are the kind of people to go and check them out, follow them, support them, stuff like that. So Archie, I think the first time I saw Archie was in the Golden World Archive opera.
Cool.
Will Kahn, that one. and because Pete was in that. So I think I saw that Pete was in that, and then I checked that out, listened to that, and that's how I first came across Archie, and then just kind of like followed him since. And you mentioned Stefani before as well. Same kind of deal, really. Just kind of like through that crowd, I definitely don't know Archie and Stefani at this point as well as Pete, but hopefully we can rectify that at some point.
Yeah, I'd love to get all of us in the same place. It would be so cool.
Totally, man. The fact that we're all like in the UK, that definitely helps.
It does help.
I mean, for you, I guess like you've met Archie and you're playing with his band. I know that like Stefani like came and did a gig with you guys at one point as well, right? So how did that come about with you joining Archie's band in the first place?
Oh, this is a lovely story. So when I first got to Brighton, I was in a function band and we were playing twice a week at a venue in Hove, which is near Brighton, but still Brighton. It's weird. And Archie was one of three vocalists that we had in the band. So we had a guy called Chris, and we had Archie, and we also had a girl called Amber. And they would always do these amazing 3-part harmonies, and Archie would always take the insane range stuff if we were going to do Somebody to Love. And it was so impressive, so much fun. And I just thought, this guy's voice is so wasted in this band. Because it was exceptional. And I was like, how are you doing that? And he's the nicest guy to talk to. And then I remember this one day, he asks me if I want to go get like a drink with him. And he talks me through this project, Tommy and the Angels, the one that is now out. He wanted my involvement as a drummer and as a video guy. And we ended up getting an office building together and stuff near Brighton Station. And so we would base our operations out of this building, and we would set up in there. We'd do the interviews with Deanna, for example, that happened in that office building. We'd sort out all the merch and all the promo. I think I've still actually, here it is. Ooh. Yeah, still got my Archie Caine crew hoodie.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're the only people that have these. Yeah.
Wow, cool.
We've not dived on the merch yet, but we'll see. But yeah, so we'd base all this stuff out of the office. It was a really nice central place to go. And we wanted to also launch a gig and get a couple of other local artists that were also rocky and heavy involved. We didn't headline it. We just kind of went as middle support, and we let someone else headline because we thought that'd be nice. And
so you organized the show then?
But we organized it, yeah. So we did it through Dogstar Metal, who you, I think, know as well.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So we went through them. Yeah, sorry. So we went through them, got all these bands together, and we wanted to cover a couple of songs in Archie's band that needed really a female vocalist to join in. So we did What About Us by not Within Temptation. Oh God, all these artists have left my brain. I'm so sorry. I have too many songs in my head.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's going on here. Too many songs from all the genres.
Oh no, it was. I shouldn't have corrected myself. It was.
Cool.
Right, I'm gonna do that part again. Sorry. So in Archie's band, we did a couple of covers. So we did In This Moment, we did Within Temptation, we did all that good stuff. And we wanted to get a female vocalist involved. Now, Archie knew Stefani somehow. I can't remember how. He has probably explained it to me, but it's just left my brain, the information. And she met us in Brighton. Exceptional person and phenomenal vocalist. And it was a really, really fun gig. We'd all rehearsed kind of separately, and then we all brought it together. It was so much fun. And we're all still very much in touch, and I'm very, very keen to get back on a stage with her at some point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, wicked, man. I remember, spectating from afar at that time, just seeing the posts and the Instagram stories or whatever. It seemed like a really, really cool gig. Yeah. Even the stuff I remember just of you like preparing for it in the studio and things like that. Yeah, it was really cool, man. It seemed like such a buzz around it. Oh,
yeah, it really was. And we actually, so the venue wasn't particularly big, but it was fully sold out because it was a ticketed thing.
Wow,
and
nice.
There's a spiral staircase that goes to the actual downstairs venue where we were. Yeah. And there were people on that staircase, like watching.
Yeah. Wow.
And we didn't even have room. The stage, it's more a venue for like duos, trios, that sort of thing. And hilariously, we brought this full like metal band in there and
Symphonic Metal. Yeah.
Yeah. So the
which
stage was,
venue is it?
So this is the Rossi Bar, which is in Brighton. It's quite small, and I say it's not really a band venue, but I think most bands play there anyway.
Yeah, that is.
And it's a good vibe. Like, so the stage was only really big enough for the drum kit. And this was a full-size drum kit at the time as well. 2 Marshall stacks, a bass cab, Archie and Steph. That was it. So the bassist had to stand like on a bench over there, sort of thing. And then our guitarists had to stand on the other side on another bench.
Wow.
It was cool.
Yeah, that's it, man. I mean, the thing is, like, that's definitely a lesson you learn, I think, when you play on this kind of local scene, is that you're much better getting a smaller venue and packing the hell out of it than you are like a big venue that feels super empty. I mean, that's much worse, man.
Yeah.
Like,
I've been to a couple of gigs where I've thought there should be way more people here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. We must have all done. That's got to be a rite of passage for playing gigs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So did Stefani sing like Diane's parts on the original songs, or?
So for the original things, we actually weren't gigging the Tommy and the Angels stuff at that point.
Oh wow. Okay.
So it was an entire cover gig at that point, I believe, because I think this was November-ish, and it hadn't really fully come out at that point. We were working on it and we wanted to, but I don't.
What's that? November 21? Is that?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Around that time.
Not. Yeah, 2020. Everything was. Everything was the shot. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was mostly that, and she was singing the second vocals, all the female vocals on the covers we were doing.
The covers, okay.
But when we did the Tommy and the Angels gig last year in February, when we were on the same leg as Tiberius and Azure, etc. So we just used the backing track for Deanna. So we had her vocal parts just as a part of the track. So Archie would stop singing and then just
voice comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was cool.
Nice. You need like a hologram or something.
Well, I would love to actually do this for real. I mean, so we had a fantastic Skype call or Zoom call with Deanna when we did the interview. And she was just as thrilled to be involved as we were to have her. It was so surreal. And
she seemed so, yeah. I remember watching that video, like the three of you speaking. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Really cool
and she's so driven on social media to just keep talking about it, and she's genuinely really happy, and we love it. And I think it would be an easy yes for her if the opportunity did come up to do this in person. It's just a logistical thing with her being in the Netherlands. So
right, yeah, exactly. Isn't down the road, not too far, but not too close either.
But if we did have Deanna for a gig, I wouldn't want to play a small venue. That's just in my head. I'd want to do like a big stage and have Deanna there and
a festival or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if she'd be down for like a coffee shop gig. The cost might not work, but
a Brighton basement. Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah, don't rule it out. That's cool. I mean, I suppose it's probably a bit more Archie's territory, but like, do you guys have much planned there? Like, and do you plan to gig a lot, or it's more of a kind of sporadic thing?
I think at the minute it's quite sporadic. There's new music incoming and that sort of thing. And
cool.
I get the impression that it would be better to do more originals. So at the moment we're in a position where we could gig the whole album, but that's still only a couple of songs. So I think Archie would want to, I mean, I can't really speak for him, but I get the impression that he'd want to hop on with other bands like we've done in the past and do more of a show that way, sort of thing.
Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah, you also mentioned to me before about Azure. Like, are you friends with those guys? I guess. Yeah. With like doing the gig and stuff. Those guys are fantastic, man. Like, they are really, really good band.
Yeah, this is the thing I noticed a lot in the metal scene, especially in Brighton, at least. So I've been in lots of green rooms with different people, and I always have the best time with metal musicians. They just
Right,
seem
that's cool.
extra cool, extra chill, extra kind. And
Nice.
it's that thing about breaking away from any like stereotypes you might think about. So you think, oh, metal, aggressive. No, these guys are so chill. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, Azure, like that. Yeah, they're very like proggy, very creative. I mean, I'm sure that they have musical influences from across the whole spectrum as well. So probably, you know, you're kind of people, I'd have thought.
Yeah. Well, their
I
guitarist
don't
Galen,
actually like. Go on.
Oh, so I was just gonna say their guitarist Galen technically blows my mind. Like he posted a tutorial the other day on how to play something. Yeah, and then their vocalist Chris Sampson.
Insane,
so yeah, Archie definitely looks at his performances and goes,
yeah. Those guys, like especially those two, they're a real power duo, man. I don't actually know them too well because you mentioned them as like a mutual connection. I just like to find new and upcoming music artists, and those guys I actually found quite a while ago as well, like another like 2 or 3 years ago or something. Like and at the time they were like fairly like you know, under the radar still, and they didn't have a lot out. But I just came across them and I thought like, wow, this is awesome. Like, and I remember reaching out to them straight away and just being like, yeah, I just discovered your music, like absolutely love it, which is always a nice thing to do with musicians. And yeah, I just remember they were really nice and polite and you know, and cool, and I just followed them since, and just like I always had it in my head like these guys are one to watch, like they're a really, really cool upcoming band. And then, you know, lo and behold, like more recently, they've really kind of picked up that acclaim. I saw that they got like, was it Prog magazine or something, voted them one of the best upcoming prog bands or something like that.
And I believe they're playing.
I was like, see, I knew it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they're playing like Power Metal Quest Fest and stuff now on the same gigs as like
probably
Periphery, and I think Periphery, definitely Dirty Loops, one of the gigs they played with, which is very cool.
Nice.
So
yeah, they're so good, man. I like how some of their stuff like borders into almost like a video game sounding kind of territory as well. Like yeah, really cool, man. Yeah, really cool. Okay, so aside from like, you know, Archie and all of that good stuff, in terms of like your solo work, other projects that you might have, like what else are you working on at the moment, and you know, what things are happening going forwards?
So I'm working on 3 very different things at the moment. So one of which is a very heavy album. It's going to be instrumental, but it's very heavy. And then the other one is going to be more funk. So it's going to be very influenced by Lettuce and all these other weird bands in the funk scene that are very cool. It's just groove. That's basically it. I'm really into that. And that's going to be a bit of a collaboration with a few people.
Cool.
4 things. So I'm working on speaking of video games, a Halo soundtrack remake with a friend.
Wow.
So the music from the Halo games, we're going to try and gent it up a bit and put that out and try and pay homage to the original.
Cool.
And then there's going to be like a filmy music thing coming out that's going to be called Music for Saving the World. And it's basically rock orchestra stuff.
Wow. That sounds fantastic. What a great mix, man.
Yeah. Try to bounce between all of them and just keep it fresh.
So that's wicked. So you're bouncing between these projects and then playing gigs with people, doing sessions.
Yeah.
And that's and you mentioned as well like the filmmaking in terms of like music videos, promo stuff for bands, things like that.
Yeah, in fact, just today even someone asked if I can do that sort of thing, so I've got to try and pencil it in somewhere, but yeah.
Cool, nice. So it's like it's more or less like a rounded mix of all these different things.
Yes.
Yeah, but overall a very musical life.
Yeah, music is everything at the moment.
Cool, man. And do you see like, you know, in the future or in the long shot, like, do you see would you like to get more back into the film world, or, you know, what are your biggest ambitions? Like, well, what would you like to do as a musician? These kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, you know, every time I pick a camera up, I really wish I was in the film industry. It's so much fun. And I think at some point I'd love to work on an actual film. Who wouldn't, who went to film school? So yeah. So that's definitely something I want to do. And then musically wise, I'm really excited to see where the things I'm in go, because I feel like there is a lot of momentum with a lot of the projects, and the artists that are in these groups, they're also driven and ready to just keep going and see what happens. And I love that. I love someone that wants to take something somewhere. So yeah,
that's it, man.
Definitely.
Yeah, that energy is infectious. It's a positive thing.
Yeah, and it's weirdly lacking in a lot of musicians, and I don't know if that's self-doubt that you feel like you'll never get there, or if it's just people that just want to jam and stuff. But me particularly, and a lot of musicians I work with, we have this goal to just see how far we can go, you know?
Awesome. Yeah, man. You got to love that. And then, yeah, like band together and encourage each other to do so. And yeah, that's what it's all about, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, wicked, man. Wicked. Well, like, I mean, it's you know, I feel like there's a lot of things that we can talk about, man. We've already been going for a little while. I was wondering, is there anything in particular that you'd like to discuss in addition to the things we've been talking about?
I don't even know. I feel like any other tangent will just take hours now, because like there is so much we could talk about. But maybe. Yeah. I always am fascinated by the mental health side of music, whether it's the healing that comes as a result of being a musician or making music at 432 hertz, for example, but also the mental health side of that doubt, and that sort of, is what I'm doing necessary, or is what I'm doing good? Like, yeah, I always am fascinated by that, because I got to speak to, so there's a guy called Corey Wong, who's the guitarist for Wolfpack. I've interviewed him, and we were speaking about that thing where he's collaborating with massive artists at the moment. Does he still feel like he's a bit of an imposter in that situation, even though he's played Madison Square Garden and he's way up there with these huge artists? And he's exactly the same. Sometimes, you know, he'll doubt if what he's doing is, I suppose, adding value almost, because he doesn't know. You know what I mean? It's like,
I do, yeah. I do. I very much know what you mean. I certainly experienced that myself and wrestle with it. I think that most of us do. Yeah. In musicians, probably a lot of artists and people as well. Yeah, that's it's a tough one, man. And I think that, you know, having community and stuff like we spoke about is definitely helpful for that, because if you have those other people to kind of give you that objective
validation, right?
Yeah. But yeah, what are your thoughts on it, man? What do you find helps?
Well, I think that weirdly having these conversations helps, because I often, if I'm doing it, it's a bit like, well, I'm doing this. Yeah. But then if someone actually points out and lists the things I'm doing, it's like, oh yeah, I am doing quite a few things. I should probably stop and sleep.
Yeah, puts things back in perspective for sure. Yeah.
And I think you're fantastic at this, at being a hype man essentially for other people.
Oh, thanks,
and
man.
Also for being a brilliant musician yourself, sort of thing. So I think having people like yourself is really helpful for these situations, and just encouraging that chat and that network, and encouraging the collaborative thing. That's so important.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm with you, because it really can be otherwise like quite a lonely endeavor, you know, like even just the notion of like creating, or for you, like you're doing all of these things, and like it's great when you're playing in bands, being other people, but a lot of it is very internal, right?
Yeah.
And like writing and like a lot of the producing and everything as well. Like, you know, sometimes you're really like having to dig deep in creating that process, and it can be very like vulnerable, you know?
Absolutely.
So,
especially with some of the releases I put out earlier last year, they're very about who I am as a person and separating the stage version of me to the actual version of me and stuff. And you have to really break yourself down to understand those feelings so you can then write about it. But then you don't necessarily have someone to help you get out of it again. You've got to do that yourself too. Yeah. Especially, actually, you probably feel this spending hours in front of a computer alone, sort of thing, just mixing or writing and stuff.
That's it.
Yeah. I've not actually seen another person since I came back to Brighton from New Year's, mostly because most people are, still having New Year's wherever they went. But I've not really gone outside yet, so I should probably do that.
Yeah. It can be easily done. I've definitely, without like making myself do that. I've definitely fallen into these slumps of being like a hermit in a cave, just like totally detached from reality. I think again, it's just kind of a tendency of creative people,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, with all the problems in the world,
hang on.
I was just going to say, sorry, with all the problems in the world, may as well stay indoors and play music. So.
Oh yeah, right on, man, for sure. I think I've noticed that like every now and again we get a bit of latency that trips us up, but I think we're doing okay. But you mentioned about like the songs that you've done this year, and like I totally felt that like you've put out some stuff that really does feel like so personal. And I think it's so well done because even in like the production and everything, like it feels really vulnerable in that way. Like a track that I found really moving was Identity.
Oh yeah.
Which, I guess is like quite on the nail, I suppose, with what it's discussing. But I mean, perhaps you could elaborate a little bit on what that song is about.
Absolutely. Well, it's about not really knowing who I am anymore, just by being so, being such a musician all the time on stage in front of other people, performing. And eventually, when you do that more than having time for yourself, that starts becoming who you are. So there was a lyric in there that's called, it goes, I define myself on what others see, but I never found my identity. So it's a bit like, am I just this music guy that's really happy and tells jokes and stuff? And then if that's all I'm doing, like, is that what I need to be in my personal life? It's weird. So I'm still struggling with that now.
Interesting. I can imagine. Yeah, that's an interesting topic. I've really struggled with that as well, myself. So, I think that, it's just, again, like, I think a lot of these are cornerstones of what, more sensitive people feel. And I think the sensitivity in a way, like, I mean that in kind of contrast with creativity, the fact that we're more in touch with these feelings. And I think that this is stuff a lot of people can relate to. And so I especially think, at this point in life, there is that sense of like us kind of like finding our identity, kind of shedding the skin of like, us as a kid and as a young person and kind of coming into a new stage of life. So yeah, it's very moving, man. Yeah,
but it's also hard. It's also hard. I remember in the past, I don't know, I'd have an argument with an ex or something, and I wouldn't be able to articulate how I felt with words. So I'd be like, I'll write a song. And I can communicate how I feel through music way easier than with words.
Yeah.
And I feel like being a musician and a songwriter is forcing me to learn how to communicate my feelings with words. So
that's awesome. I absolutely love that. Like, that was really cool. And the last podcast I did as well with John Heckathorn, we were chatting about that at one point, and it was really funny. He said how, like, when you think about it, like, words are actually a very clumsy form of communication. You know, it's all kind of down to interpretation, and there is something so like immediate about music that it's kind of like unlike anything else, in the way that you can just be so immediately moved by it. It can impact you in a way that it's all relative as well to your own experience and what's going to connect with different people. But when I think about music in that kind of way, it's just like I love the abstract nature of music and how it has this like magical quality to it. You know, it's one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm with you, man. Like I think people like us, we may have struggled to communicate our feelings and things like that, and music becomes an outlet for us. I mean, you kind of brushed on it as well, but you see music and creativity in that way as a kind of therapeutic sort of process device, would you say?
It's definitely a therapeutic, well, crutch is maybe the word. I lean on it way too much. But it's weird because now I'm in a position where I'm listening to music to try and, you know, chill out. I'll be going on a walk, for example, and just have some headphones in, and I'll be listening to John Mayer or something, trying to feel better. Nice. And I'll be going, oh, that's a really cool chord sequence. I want to try that. And then I'm not sad anymore because I'm thinking about that instead. So
yeah,
it pulls me out of it in other ways than most people probably would be pulled out using music. It's a distraction. But
but it's you know, a distraction, as you say. Like, I understand the nature of, you know, a crutch and a distraction, but at the same time, I kind of find it to be like, it's kind of like meditation, you know, as you said, like when you become focused on it, and like, especially when you're in a production or whatever, you're recording, as you say, you're thinking about the chord sequence, and you're kind of like problem solving of what you're going to do next with it. And you become so focused, and you know, once you can unlock this kind of flow state, it's actually a very healthy place to be, I think, and to spend a lot of time, because that is where we're able to kind of switch our minds off. And as you say, we can overthink, we can self-criticize ourselves and think about, oh God, the things that our brains can do, you know? So it's good. It's good to have that outlet to be able to like get into that flow state and just be focused and live in that moment. It's really a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad it's not just me.
That's it, man. Well, as you said, like, it's really helpful, I think, for, you know, people like us to be able to just talk to each other, and as you say, feel like you know, we're not just insane, like living in a vacuum, which it can sometimes feel like. So yeah, it's really cool to be connected like that, man. I've absolutely loved having this conversation. I feel like I could talk to you all night. I said this before, but like, is there any last things that you want to get in there? Maybe you can also like tell people where to find you and what they should do, or
sure,
if they want to hire you, maybe.
So so my name is Theo Watts on everything, and the tag is he's a minimalist, but it's spelled like Hesse minimalist. So Instagram is the best thing for me, just because it's where all my videos are, and that's a good way to gauge things. And I will be posting tutorials, behind the scenes, behind the music, original music, and any work I do with people on there. So come say hi.
Wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. Well, dude, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, and we'd definitely have to do this again sometime.
I'd love that. The pleasure's mine. I think we should try and, get in a room at some point. That would be really lovely.
100%, man. It's got to happen.
Brilliant. Oh, cool. Thank you for having me, my friend.
Cheers, man. Cheers. Thank you for listening to this episode of Creating a Universe. Special thanks to Theo for joining me. I really enjoyed our chat. Be sure to check out Theo at he'saminimalist.com and on Instagram at he'saminimalist. Links will be in the show notes. That's all for this one. Until next time, take care.